All right, welcome back to Draws and Fades, episode 98, preview of the 2022 PGA Championship at Southern Hills in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm your host, Owen Vrabel, joined by my co-host, Matthew Miller,
What's going on, guys? Welcome back.
and producer, Nick Boss.
What's going on, fellas? Happy Major Week.
Happy Major Week, and we are partnered with Rotoballer in 2022, so make sure to win big with Rotoballer.com's PGA Premium Pass. Are you ready to dominate? Rotoballer's premium DFS package includes exclusive tools, DFS cheat sheets, research stations, and our lineup optimizer, and so much more to help you win big. For limited time, get your PGA Premium Pass for 50% off using promo code DNF10 for another 10% discount. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio to sign up today and start rotoballing like a boss. So, brutal week last week at Byron Nelson, but luckily we're moving on and it's Major Week. So, we'll give you a brief recap of the AT&T Byron Nelson. KH Lee pulls it off again. I mean, great week of golf, great Sunday. Good for him. We did not have many things in the mix come Sunday afternoon. But more importantly, we'll get into the course preview at Southern Hills. We were back here in 2007 when Tiger Woods won. We'll give you our strategy for this week, what we think is going to work well at the course in Oklahoma, and we'll give you our one-and-done thoughts as well. Go through the odds list on FanDuel. So it is major season, best field of the year. Only players that are qualified that aren't here will be Paul Casey, Harris English, Jimmy Walker, and, of course, Phil Mickelson. Maybe we'll give a little Phil talk in there. But, yeah, we'll give you our outright plays, top 10s, top 20 thoughts, and one-and-done, like I said. So follow us on Twitter at draws_n_fades and at Owen_Vrabel and Matty Mills 85. And please give us a 5-star rating if you get a chance and review us on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate it. Let's go, boys. PGA Championship 2022. Let's put the Byron Nelson behind us, huh?
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I will say it's. I guess because the major is coming up the next week too, but it's got to be. I think maybe number one of my least favorite event of the year.
Yeah. I mean,
it sucks.
It sucked. Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like, it is. It's. I'm not fully against Birdie Fest, but it just TPC Craig Ranch just really wasn't. It just wasn't a lot. It wasn't very entertaining to watch. We'll say that, and obviously, not really having anyone in the mix come late Sunday makes it less enjoyable as well. But walking
even, it was a good leaderboard. It was JT, Keith were in the mix. A lot of guys that were pretty good were in the mix, and it's just I don't know. It just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah. Joaquin Niemann was 2 down heading into Sunday, and I thought I was going to at least have a sweating Sunday, and he was just awful. So he didn't even catch the top 20 for me, which was going to be my only winning bet of the week. If he didn't win, which he very much did not, finished T25 or something horrible. So we're just gonna move on from that because, I think the only things you could really kind of take note of, I guess. I know Andy Lack tweeted out last week, every single one of the last 15 PGA champions made the cut in their prior start. So there were some guys, I think notable guys, that didn't play well to start last week, like Sam Burns, who I've been shouting out for a while, having a ticket on him at the PGA. Zalatoris didn't make the cut, or a few others. And then 14 of the last 15 PGA champions finished in the top 30 in their prior start. 14 of the top 15 were top 30 in tee to green in their prior start. And 7 of the last 15 finished in the top 5 in their prior start. So I mentioned that because obviously we just mentioned how Spieth and JT did play well last week. They are obviously coming in good form. And Matsuyama and Xander played really well on Sunday. PGA champions, obviously, you're coming in relatively good form just based off of those trends. And it's definitely something to look at. But we were just chatting off before we got on here. The AT&T Byron Nelson being the event before the PGA Championship is something that's new, for one. So in terms of the last 15 years, it's a big sample size. It really doesn't play into what's the current climate of where the PGA is being played. So I don't know how much to really look into that, but it's of note, I guess. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah. So the PGA Championship used to be played back in August.
Yep.
So the WGC St. Jude was right before that. So a lot of those trends, I mean, the WGCs, you have just 80 of like the top players in the world. It's a no cut event. So of course, like all those guys are going to make the cut because there's a no cut. And it's pretty easy to finish inside the top 30 because you just have to be top half in the field. And you get a bunch of Asian guys in those fields and European guys anyway. So, I mean, it's something to consider, but I think not all stats are created equally. Considering where it is on the schedule now, if it was like that for the last 15 years, I would weigh it more than if it was coming off of WGC for
Right. Well, and also the stat says their prior start. So, not everyone played at the AT&T Byron Nelson. We did have a pretty good field, actually, surprisingly, like we mentioned last week. There were some big names there. DJ made the cut, didn't really play well on the weekend. Like I said, Hideki and Xander played well on Sunday, but the start before that would have been Wells Fargo, or to a bunch of guys we haven't seen in a while. It could have been RBC Heritage, could be even going as far back as the Masters, or maybe they played in the Zurich. So I don't know. Yeah, it being in May now, it kind of seems a little trickier to take into account those trends. But I do think current form is important coming into an event where it's going to be really tough to make par. And I would be a little worried about guys who we haven't seen a ton of, but it's a major preparation is a different level for these type of events. So regardless of where they played, I think whatever they were doing, they thought was in their best interest for themselves. Like if they didn't play Wells Fargo or didn't play at AT&T Byron Nelson, decided they wanted to move straight forward to the PGA, I don't think you can really hold it against them until, they potentially don't play well. But that's, we can't really figure that out until after. The trends are nice to see, but I think it is tough to gauge considering that the event has moved to May. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. If it helps you narrow down your list and you need that, all the power to you. I think it's kind of always risky to take a guy that hasn't played well and, recently anyway. But there's certain guys who just kind of seem to peak in major season and kind of ignore leading up to it. Look at last year. I mean, it came down to Brooks and Phil, and neither of them were coming in hot. So,
no, definitely not.
And the PGA, not to get too much into the trends of it, but there's been a lot of weird winners at this event in particular. So, I think this PGA is going to play a little bit, tougher than some of the PGAs we've seen, but there has been in this major, as opposed to others, just some strange winners. Phil last year, dating back, Jason Duffner, Jimmy Walker, Y.E. Yang. So, I feel like this is kind of the one that someone could steal.
Yeah, no, it is funny to go back through the history of the PGA Championship winners. It does seem more random than maybe the Masters or the Open Championship or even the U.S. Open. But I think there is something to be said getting back into like being in form. Like Jimmy Walker, the year he won, I think he had 2 wins on the PGA Tour that year. Keegan Bradley actually played well the year he won in 2011. That was kind of back towards getting back towards the beginning of his career. The Y.E. Yang thing, I think, is definitely an anomaly as well. And Tiger was in the mix that year, and Tiger played poorly on Sunday. But I think Y.E. Yang also won an event that year too. So it's not like they seem more out of the blue the farther you get away from them, I think. But there's definitely something to guys have also won here without a ton of major experience. Keegan for sure. JT hadn't won a major yet. Colin. And yeah, I can't believe I forgot to mention Jason Duffner won back in 2013. Shout out Duff Daddy. So he'll be back this week, which is nice. And actually just to mention, because it is I think the best field probably in all the tournaments on the PGA Tour, but qualifications are the last 5 basically all the last 5 major championship winners are in attendance. Last 3 players championship winners, low 15 scores and ties from last year's PGA, low 20 scores in the previous PGA Professional Championship, top 70 in the money standings, and then players from U.S. and Europe Ryder Cup teams that are inside the top 100 in official world golf ranking. And then any tournament winner co-sponsored and sanctioned by the PGA Tour. So basically, if you've won anything of note, you are inside the top 70 of the money list. Like, all the best players are here. I mentioned the 4 guys who aren't. Harris English and Paul Casey are hurt. Jimmy Walker's old and probably also hurt. And then Phil Mickelson is off the rails. So
And now Sanjay with the withdrawal.
And now Sanjay with the withdrawal. Good call. So feel bad for Sanjay because the majors are important for the South Koreans, you know?
Yeah.
This is his chance.
Yeah.
He blew it by playing in Korea for no reason. Or where was he playing?
He was, yes, I think he was in Korea, which is.
He was.
I don't even understand why you're out of the country with the major coming up, but whatever.
Poor Sanjay. So that'll probably be the last time we talk about Sanjay for at least tonight. So shout out Sanjay. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get into the course. We, haven't been here. We weren't planning on being here. This tournament was supposed to be played at Trump Bedminster, New Jersey. So going from the Northeast all the way out to Oklahoma. And the course has definitely been renovated since the last time we saw it when Tiger Woods won in 2007. And it's going to be a beast this week, Matt. So why don't you give us a little insight as to what we're working with this week, and then we'll hit the odds board.
Yeah, par 70, there's kind of a little bit of discrepancy over the yardage. Some people that are pretty reliable in the golf community are saying it's going to play somewhere in the 7,300 range, 7,350. I think from the tips, it has the ability to play over 7,500, which is absolutely, a beast. It's going to be tough either way. It's going to be long. But the thing about it is a lot of the length comes on the par 3s and the par 5s. The par 3s, 3 of them are over 200 yards, and the par 5s, both of them are going to be 3-shot holes for a majority of the field. So it's not like your typical, longer course where all the par 4s are super long. And distance is probably going to be advantageous this week, and some of them are going to be long, but a lot of the distance is coming on the par 5s and the par 3s. Bent grass greens, as you mentioned, last time we saw it on the PGA Tour was 2007 when Tiger won at -8. Back then, it was a lot tighter, so a lot of guys were taking less than driver off the tee, which obviously makes it play a lot longer also. But since then, they made the fairways wider, which means a lot more guys, I would think, are going to be taking driver off the tee, or it becomes more of an option. We have heard that there's supposed to be some substantial wind this week, so we'll see kind of how that affects it and how that changes how guys play it off the tee. Maybe they get a little more cautious to, stay out of trouble. I think this week, so things that I'm looking for, approach is obviously always important. I think this week, as much as ever, we're shooting into relatively small greens, and there's a lot of runoff around the greens from what I've heard and read, where if you miss greens, you could end up, 30, 40 yards away from the hole. So you can get
just an absolute disaster if you're a regular.
Yeah, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble, and that kind of leads into the next point. Around the green, the short game is going to be extremely important because just given small greens and kind of a longer course, you're going to be missing greens. So
right, especially with the wind.
Around. Yeah, a major, the wind. You're going to be scrambling around a lot this week. So I think it's going to take a really good short game to win this week. As all majors, you could say a complete game wins it. But I think this week in particular, if you don't have your short game, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I think off the tee, distance is going to help. We talked about this a little bit before. I think obviously the closer you are to the hole, you're going to be, you're not going to be hitting longer irons in, which it gives you a better chance of, keeping your approach shot on the green if they're firm and there's wind and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think a lot of it's going to be approach and short game, at least as far as I'm weighing it. I wouldn't look too much into the par 5 scoring because, like I mentioned, a lot of it is going to be three-shot holes for a lot of these guys. So I don't know if you had anything else you were looking at, maybe some bogey avoidance, stuff like that.
Yeah, there's only 2 par 5s, so and they're not going to be easy scoring holes. So like you said, and with the wind, I've also been following some guys that are, Oklahoma natives and have been, kind of tracking the weather, so to speak. And there's going to be different wind conditions basically every day. You're going to be getting them from different directions. So the course is going to play different each and every day. And I think when you're looking at a major tournament, there are guys that are elite in certain aspects and can be above average in others. So I think there's multiple ways for guys to win this tournament, but you either have to be absolutely lights out on your approach game, which, as we just mentioned, is going to be extremely difficult when you're playing in the wind. So I do agree with the off the tee having, I think, pretty above average importance this week, because if you are hitting a shorter iron into the green, I think you can have more control with your spin and where you're trying to land these balls on these smaller greens. So if you're an elite approach player, your game has to be on. And if you don't have the short game in the bag to kind of recover off your missed approaches, it's going to be difficult to save par. So obviously the most well-rounded guys I think will be most in play. But it's really just it's the ultimate test where you're not going to have an easy day. You're going to have to grind every hole. And the par fours aren't super intimidating on paper, but when you're playing in these winds, if it's, you're playing with the wind in your face on a 460-yard par four, it can completely change what you're working with. Obviously, I think you can look into guys who play better in the winds, guys with lower ball flights, but I think that's something to consider when looking at the board this week. But it's also, we mentioned that there have been some unique winners here, but it's really hard to look past kind of the top 20, 25 players in the world and think that they're going to have a great chance of winning this week without being perfect. So we'll get into the reasonings behind the guys we are taking, because, we can spin zone our way into anyone basically. But, the approach play is always huge for me. I think that can kind of mitigate the potential disaster at this course. Also, it's like you almost want to hit the bunkers on this course because of those runoffs. Like, you'd rather be in the sand next to the green than with a tight lie 30, 40 yards off the green, hitting into an elevated green, something like that. I mean, even the best players in the world are going to struggle with that shot where they can't see exactly where they're trying to land it. Then similar to Augusta, like, the greens are very undulating despite being smaller. So, I mean, this course, we haven't seen it in a while. I think it's going to play like a beast this week. If the wind is as big of a factor as it can be, it's going to be even crazier. But
yeah, based on what we've seen and heard, I mean, I think we're looking at a winning score. That's
apparently people from Oklahoma are saying that no matter what, it's going to be windy. So
yeah, no, I think the winning score we're looking at is going to be like a -7, -6 range.
I think people will be surprised if it gets to 10 under or better.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too. I mean, guys who play well in difficult scoring conditions, guys who play good on tough tracks, I think, could have a strong case at a course like this. So
and that's why, I mean, I don't know if you looked at it a little bit, just looking at history and stuff like that. I almost looked at like US Open history and major histories, because I feel like it's going to play a little bit more like that in terms of the difficulty than, some of the previous PGAs we've seen.
Yeah. Although, I mean,
last year's was tough though.
Yeah. We have had some tough PGAs of late. I think they've kind of made them more difficult recently. I think they've kind of gotten that they kind of felt like they were the forgotten major, and they tried to spice things up a little bit. I mean, when Brooks won last, I think he was 8 under or something along those lines. So it's going to be tough this week. Maybe we're overestimating how tough it's going to be, but I kind of trust what I've been reading and seeing, that even the best golfers in the world are going to have a tough time making par in a lot of these holes. So with that being said, like I said, all the best players in the world are here this week. And there are some definite odd discrepancies on books. So I definitely suggest, looking around. And I think we mentioned this, as the podcast has gone on here, but I certainly regret not taking a few guys earlier this year when their odds were better. But It's hard to predict who's going to be playing well coming into a major. But you certainly could have gotten better numbers on plenty of guys that are under 30-1 that were above 30-1 earlier this season. But that being said, we're on FanDuel. I'll be running down FanDuel tonight. John Rahm, Scotty Scheffler, the co-favorites at 12-1. Then Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy at 16. Justin Thomas and Colin Morikawa are at 17 and 19. And then DJ, Cam Smith, and Patrick Cantlay are all 20 and 21. So those are 9 guys at the top of the board where You can find a little bit better numbers depending on where you're looking. I think DraftKings has DJ at a better number, Cam Smith at a better number. But then Cantlay and JT at much worse numbers. So that's kind of what we're working with here. Matt, top 9 on the board. Where were you looking? Obviously, it's a major. It feels kind of like you want to take one of these elite level players that are at the top of the board.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going back to my guy, Rory. He's
trending.
I'm going to be
peaking.
same old tune, but I believe in him. He's trended in the right direction. I mean, I feel like number one, he's very confident in this game right now. I talked about it a little bit leading up to the Masters, how he was saying, like, even when he kind of fell apart in the weekend with the Arnold Palmer, like, I feel like I hit the ball really well. And for him, I feel like the confidence is a big thing. Like, when he's got that kind of swagger going, he's just like a much different player. And then I thought he played pretty well at the Masters. I mean, obviously that Sunday was incredible where he just kind of tapped into, what looked like vintage Rory and lit it on fire. And Scheffler was great. So he never really had a chance of winning. But I thought
he also, that was like not classic Rory, but like, yeah, he finished runner-up, but like it didn't really.
Yeah, I will say, though, a little bit about that. Like, he was
never in contention.
No, I don't think he was in contention. But he was, like, people are saying he, like, backdoored to top 5. Like, he was only, like, 3 shots out of 4th place going into Sunday. Like, it was pretty tight. Scheffler had a nice cushion. It was like him and Cam Smith, and then the rest of the pack was – it felt like it was a 2-horse race going into Sunday.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, by definition, he kind of backdoored it, but
yeah,
he played better than others on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he doesn't – and, I mean, I think people give that shit to JT too, but, like, it does sometimes feel when the pressure is kind of a little bit off on a Sunday, Rory kind of goes low. But it's not like he can't win major championships. We've seen him do it before. So, I mean, he's definitely peaking. So
yeah, no, and then he played well at the Wells Fargo. He finished 5th. So just some stuff that I like about him this week, statistic-wise. He's 4th strokes gained total, difficult courses in his last 24. We were talking about how tough this is going to be. 11th around the green and 20th in short game. I think he's really kind of stepped up his short game this year. He's 6th off the tee, and kind of approach was holding him back really recently, which is, for him, he's had trouble with his wedges like throughout his career, but it was a little odd how low those numbers were compared to what I was expecting to see. But he gained 4.7 on approach at the Wells Fargo, so I like that a lot. And it just kind of feels like he's so close. He's obviously very due for a major. He's not won one in quite some time. I feel like he gets some monkey off his back this week. I like the course fit for him, so I'm gonna be in on him this week.
All right, yeah. I mean, I was expecting nothing less, especially when I know you. When Rory's in good form, you're taking him. So, I mean, he certainly played well, and like I said, yeah. I mean, he's peaking, and he looks good. He's obviously the second place at the Masters, whatever you want to call it, backdoor or whatever. I mean, he played well enough to finish second, so it did require a hole out on 18, but that kind of was just a cap off on his round. He played great all day. And like we said, I think the Masters at Augusta will, I think, have a little bit of a correlation into what we're looking at this week. Major tournament, tough around the green, kind of requires a full skill set, and he played well. So
yeah,
I'll look at that there. And he's
recently,
yeah.
Too. Like the tournaments that he's been in it's I don't know if it's intentional or what, but I mean the Wells Fargo played tough, the Masters was tough, obviously the Players was tough with the weather and the wind and all that, and then the Florida Swing was tough. It seems like he just played a bunch of tough events leading up to this.
Yeah, maybe that was intentional, but and it's also, I mean, he doesn't give a shit about the AT&T Byron Nelson, so it's not like he wanted to show up there last week, and I think he probably had other things he wanted to work on that didn't require shooting 20 under on a course that like head golf pros would be shooting under par at. So, yeah, I hear you. And actually, I mean, I'll kind of get into my thoughts on these top 9. I really think that there's a pretty good chance that the winner comes from one of these guys, and I don't think it's a week to get shy at the top of the board. And I'm probably going to take 2 guys under 25-1. And Rory is under heavy consideration. I haven't pulled the trigger on him yet. But him, just off the jump, I mean, him, Spieth, JT, and then probably Morikawa were the 4 guys that I was looking at the most. and they all have a little bit different going for them right now. But I think JT and Rory in particular, and Spieth, that the three of them are playing great golf. And JT, similar to Rory, I feel like is due for a big win. Probably even, I don't know if I want to say more so, but Rory has won more recently. He won the CJ Cup, in 2021. But JT definitely trending. I mean, 8th at the Masters, 5th last week at the Byron Nelson. Like I said, I don't think the Byron Nelson has too much to offer in terms of gauging how he's going to play this week at Southern Hills. But just a mindset wise, I mean, he's been so good tee to green. He's been absurd. I mean, he's gained 13 strokes total at the Valspar, gained 9 strokes tee to green, gained 7.5 strokes tee to green last week, gained 6.5 strokes at the Genesis. He's just been a very elite golfer, as we know he can be, and his irons have been spectacular. He's 4th in strokes gained approach and 5th in ball striking over his last 24 rounds. He plays a tough course as well. Bogey avoidance, scrambling, around the green game. I think the around the green game with JT kind of gets lost a little bit. He's one of the best in getting up and down from around the green. He's fantastic. So I'm under the impression, and I've been under the impression for a while now, that JT is going to win one of these big ones soon, and he hasn't done it. But I think if there's a week that he will, I think it could be this week. So that's where I started my card, and I think you're in a similar position where it's really tough to make decisions up here because you could easily make a case for all these guys. But JT was the first one for me. So
yeah, I mean, it's like the more we talk about it, it's like the more, I don't know. I could, because I want to add another name up here. Maybe I could be sucked into JT. I like too, like we talked about the course in the beginning too, and it's kind of like, oh, they widen the fairways. You can kind of take driver on more, and like I feel like I like JT on a little bit wider courses like that, where there's a little bit more leeway, and
kind of same with Rory too.
Yeah, like they can just kind of unleash it, and you know what I mean. He's going to keep himself out of trouble. He does have really good around the green game. He hasn't won in a while, but I mean, I kind of like last week. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like it's easy, in my opinion, for some of these top guys to show up to an event like that and just kind of take your swings and kind of dick around out there. And like the fact that he competed and had a chance to win, like I think it's saying something. Like he wants to win. He's sick of like this shit. He wasn't just kind of out there dogging it last week to get his reps in. Like he played hard.
Yep.
So
yeah, I mean he's been close plenty of times recently. I mean 5th at the Century, 6th at the Genesis, 8th at the Phoenix Open, 3rd at the Valspar, 8th at the Masters, 5th at the Byron Nelson. So he's been sniffing to win. I mean, similar to Rory, I think you could make the case that when the pressure's off on Sundays, he's kind of, when he's a little bit out of contention, he's definitely backdoored a few finishes. But I mean, that certainly wasn't the case last week, but he didn't do enough to take down the beast that is TPC Lee. But I think this week's a different beast for JT, and I think his game, at the end of the day, it's going to be, can he make enough putts? And we actually talked about this prior to recording as well. He surprisingly had a pretty good putting year. I mean, he's 82nd this year on the PGA Tour in putting. He's gaining strokes putting on the season, which is not typical of JT. And, he gained 3.5 strokes last week, gained 3 strokes at the Valspar, gained strokes at the RBC Heritage, gained strokes at the Genesis. He's kind of popped at a few of these events. And I think if he ends up gaining multiple strokes this week putting, I think this is a week where he could definitely win an event. So,
yeah, if he putts well this week, I think he's very much like inside the top 5.
Right. So I figured we should just get the 2 beasts out of the way too. And Rahm and Scheffler, yeah, this is kind of what I was talking about, where you could have gotten a 40-1 on Scheffler. You could have gotten some serious numbers on Scheffler before he went scorched earth. And I'm so pissed too, because I mean, not pissed, but I would love to have a future bet on Scotty Scheffler, but the whole narrative where he basically said that Southern Hills is like his favorite golf course. He's a Texas guy, Oklahoma, not very far away. And he loves this course. I guess he hasn't played it much since the renovation, but still that quote alone seems like, wow, definitely should have done that. Hindsight's great. He has 4 wins since then. So, it's easy to say that now, but he's at 12-1. So pretty tough number to swallow on really anyone, depending on the week. And I think it's going to be tougher to win back-to-back majors, that being said, he played well last week as well. I mean, he looked fucking good. So I'm a little bit worried about Scheffler, and I'm always a little bit worried about Rahm, but I think kind of to a lesser degree, which is maybe bad, but Rahm wins the Mexico Open, and it kind of, I don't know if it goes under the radar, but it wasn't the best field, and it wasn't impressive. I mean, he won by 1 stroke over Kurt Kitayama, and Tony Finau shot 8 under on Sunday. Like, he played okay on Sunday to win that event. If anyone had done anything that day, he could have easily been in a playoff or lost. I mean, so I don't know if Rahm deserves to be at 12-1. I get it. Like, metrics wise, all the stats, he's still an absolute savage out there. I mean, he's first in ball striking over his last 24 rounds. First in strokes gained off the tee over his last 36. He plays great on difficult courses. He's third in this field in the last 36 rounds on tough tracks. He's great at avoiding bogeys. All the statistics you'd be looking at, Rahm and Scheffler definitely check those boxes, but tough to swallow 12-1. So, and to be fair, I think there's plenty of other great players that are at nice numbers. So, kind of easy to pass that.
I mean, I think they're both a little bit scary, but you kind of just got to hope to duck them. I mean, Scheffler, it's the same logic. Like, is he's just going to keep winning every big tournament he's in? Eventually, he has to not win one. So,
right. And I'll just touch on Jordan Spieth real quick, because him and Rory are probably going to be – one of them will be added to the card with JT. And, yeah, I mean, I'm still considering Morikawa too, but it's between those three. But Spieth, when he gets in one of these zones, man, it's really hard to see him not competing this week. I think he'll be a great one-and-done pick as well. But he wins the RBC Heritage, and then the next time we see him, other than the did he play in the Zurich? I think he did.
I don't know that he did.
You know, he might not have, but either way, he comes back, plays in the AT&T Byron Nelson, finishes second. And if it wasn't for that disgusting performance on, I think it was the 10th hole, where he botched 2 5-footers, he probably gets himself into a playoff or potentially wins the event last week, which I think he actually probably wanted to win pretty substantially, considering it was in Texas, you know, the native of Texas. But again, similar to Scheffler, grew up in Texas, Oklahoma, similar playing conditions. I think him being as hot as he is off the tee and on approach right now is tough to overlook, considering how magical we know his short game can be. I mean, he's gaining strokes around the green pretty much every start. His putter has been kind of hit or miss, and it actually has been, surprisingly, probably the weakest part of his game of late, which I think when Spieth is running right, he's making putts left and right. So Spieth is certainly on my radar this week. I'll say that.
It is a little bit, I mean, I guess concerning going through all that. Like, we just talked about, you know, 6 of the top guys in the field, and we just said they're all in pretty good form. It's like, that's concerning going down the board. You know what I mean? Like, just
and that's why I think it's
consideration when you're picking a bunch of longer shots. Like, you have to be at the top of the board. That's all in good form.
Right, and I think that's why it's worth kind of staying on the top of this board for a little while here, because they're all in great form, and they're all going to be tough to beat this week. So we haven't even mentioned Cam Smith or Patrick Cantlay, and they're both right there, 20-21 to 1. And is this not a perfect course for Cam Smith as well? I mean, any course you could say that for Scotty Scheffler, where the around the green game is going to be huge and their approach games with their wedges are going to be huge. Like, those guys both are looking great. Cam Smith played pretty poorly on Sunday at the Masters to a degree. I mean, not really. He had the water ball.
Yeah, we'll see if he gets Molinari, where, you know, you put one in the water in the Masters and you're never the same.
Yeah, I doubt it. I really do doubt it. But
I don't think so either.
But yeah, Cam Smith, and again, Cam Smith, similar to Scheffler, at the beginning of the year, if you were taking futures on them, you were getting some great numbers. Certainly not 21-1. And then Patrick Cantlay played, I think, to a degree, you could say he kind of carried his team at the Zurich to a win with Xander Schauffele. And then we see him at RBC Heritage finish second. He's got, going back to, obviously, wins the Tour Championship last year, but then he finishes 4th at the Century, 9th at the Amex, 4th at Pebble Beach, 2nd at the Waste Management, and then 2nd RBC. Didn't play well at the Masters, and he really hasn't been great in majors. So Cantlay, at the beginning of our podcast, when we first created this, was kind of an easy fade for me at a lot of these numbers. And up until this past season, really hadn't really shown any great form in elite fields where he was going to take down, you know, the big names, and I'm kind of back to that. Like when we get to a major, I just don't have the stones to back Patrick Cantlay.
I will say, like, my perception of him changed a lot when he beat Bryson in that playoff. It was impressive, but yeah, I mean, it just feels. I guess it's not that far, but it feels like a long way away from like the end of February, and those were a little bit, cake events. But he was like 6, 7 shots back at plus 300 live. Like it was like he was that good. He was like the guy, and it kind of just feels like he's fallen from that stretch a little bit. And that's just the way golf is. I mean, you can't be red hot for that long. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. That number, I don't know. A lot of people have him this week. A lot of people have futures of like 29. It's a good number, but I don't feel like he's playing his best right now, and I wouldn't take him at 21 certainly.
I mean, he's playing pretty good though. He did win the Zurich and finished second at the RBC.
But... Yeah, but I mean, I don't know.
If you won the RBC, maybe.
Yeah, I guess that's impressive. I don't put too much stock into winning the Zurich, but.
No, yeah, but I'm saying he is in pretty good form, and that's what we're saying. All these guys are in pretty good form. Besides DJ, I think is probably in the least form of the top 9 here. And I'll just say Morikawa, obviously, best iron player on tour. When he's hot, he could make the around the green game kind of irrelevant if he is hitting these greens in regulation. But I think it's going to be tough in the wind. And at the number, I just couldn't get there. So I pretty much talked myself into it. It's either going to be Spieth or Rory for me up top to combine with JT. You have any other thoughts before we move down the board here?
No, I don't. I'm like, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I guess just going through it, how many of these guys are playing really good golf.
Yeah, it is. So we'll open it up to
a little bit jaded. Like, I guess Cantlay was second at the RBC. I was just a little bit jaded by like he wasn't great at the Masters and the Players, but
right.
I mean, yeah.
All right, so we'll open it up here for a little bit bigger of a section. We got Hovland, Xander, and Shane Lowry, 25, 28, and 31, respectively. And then Hideki, Will Zalatoris are both at 32-1. And a little bit of a jump on FanDuel to Matt Fitzpatrick, Brooks Koepka, and Joaquin Niemann are at 41-1. And then Sam Burns is at 48-1. Daniel Berger, Max Homa, Corey Connors, Tony Finau are all at 55. Now we're 65 and above, and it kind of gets quickly down to at this field and this event into what I would consider kind of bomb plays. 65 and above, it quickly goes to over 100. So pretty big section here, Matt. Starting with Hovland, going from there. You'd like anyone in this middle tier?
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's a nice tier.
I think we're both on the I like a lot of guys in this tier. I think we're both going to be on the same page. I mean, Brooks Koepka.
Boom.
Yeah,
I mean,
you have to do it. It's the same. I mean, it's like the same conversation. I feel like I'm in like the Twilight Zone. Like it's 1 year ago. Like I literally got laughed at by multiple people on Twitter for like suggesting Brooks could win the PGA. I kind of almost want to pull up the tweets. Like, yeah, dude, like no way he even makes the cut. And he should have won. He like had like one of the most disappointing Sundays to lose to Phil, but like that it doesn't matter what form he's coming in. Like I actually think he's in better form this year than he was last year at this point going into this. So
yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean,
no one's even talking about him. It's like
right, and you can say the concerning part of him kind of pulling out of what he pulled out of AT&T Byron Nelson last week. Who gives a shit? I think in his head he's like, why am I going to go to a Birdie Fest event when I'm going to be playing a grinded out type event the week after? And he doesn't care about the AT&T Byron Nelson. I think to a greater degree than most, where he really has mentioned it before. I mean, he cares about the majors and pretty much nothing else. So, and he has a resume to back it up. So I think regardless of his form, whenever you see a number over, I even say like over 30, 35, like he's in play. Like it's insane to not take him regardless. I mean, I get he hasn't won in quite some time, but I mean, his PGA Championship resume is just absolutely absurd. Going back to 2015, 5th place, 2016, 4th place, 13th in 2017, and his back-to-back wins in 2018 and 19, 29th in 2020, and then a runner-up last year where, like you said, Phil Mickelson takes him down on Sunday in what was a very disappointing finish, but he was right there. And in some alternate reality, he wins that event by 4 strokes. So I can't imagine he's not going to be ready to go this week. And in any place where it's going to be tough to make birdies and you need to grind it out, Brooks Koepka is one of the best and most well-rounded players on tour when he's right. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny because you bring up like he doesn't care about the Byron Nelson. Like last year, he literally played in the Byron Nelson and was like the biggest joke ever. He visibly didn't care, and everyone's like, "Oh, Brooks like struggled to the Byron Nelson. Like I'm way out." And then the next week he comes out and he lights it up, and everyone's like, "Wow, why wouldn't I take Brooks?" At that number, I mean, I can't
it's
imagine
easy.
not doing it.
Yeah, it's easy. And even just to go, I mean, his two favorite majors by far are obviously the PGA Championship and the U.S. Open. And I just went through his PGA Championship resume, and then his U.S. Open resume is equally as insane. I mean, you go back to 2016, he finishes 13th. Then his back-to-back wins in 2017, 2018, runner-up in 2019, and then fourth place in 2021. And an additional fourth place back in 2014. It's insane what he does at these major championships. And like you kind of mentioned, the U.S. Open is known for these tough scoring conditions where 700-800 is going to be a great score and par is a great score on each individual hole. Like these are the events he thrives in. And I don't get how more people don't see that. And until he starts not playing well in these championships, you're getting him at 41-1, 45-1 some places. Like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it's just like I feel like it's easy to like people are disregarding him because he missed a cut at the Masters. I just feel like it's whatever. He had a bad. It's a bad
week.
performance at a major, but I mean, I'm willing to toss out one of them. Like,
well, it's also and I think you could even narrow it down even more, like we just did with the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship. I think those type of scoring conditions are something that he thrives in. I mean, I get it. Like the Masters actually did play extremely difficult this year, and he ended up missing the cut. But I don't know. There's something about Brooks. You can't not take him when he's over 40.
Yeah, and I actually thought he played pretty well. Like in Florida, he played pretty well at the Honda and the Valspar. And the Players. I mean, he was caught on the wrong side of the draw there, but even before that, the weather delay, he was like -3 through like it was 16 holes he was on the 16th green, and then he came out on that Saturday when it was like horrible weather and kind of fell apart. But like he played well in Florida, so that's not that long ago.
No, he played well at Phoenix. I think he's in fine form, and as long as I don't hear, I mean, even if I did hear something where he was injured to some degree, I probably just wouldn't even care.
I mean, that's what I heard last year.
Right. So doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So moving on, Brooks is a lock. Xander and Hideki, I think will be interesting this week. They obviously both finished very well last week at the Byron Nelson. Xander almost missed a cut and then went on like an insane run of birdies. I think he birdied like 25 his last 50 holes, something along those lines, something insane. But easy fade. I mean, his only win at a full field event is the Greenbrier. We've talked about this plenty of times, which is 5 years ago. So there's no reason to take him in the out.
Event to this.
What?
Pretty similar style event to this.
Yeah. 2017 Greenbrier. Yeah. But so, yeah, I think Xander's an easy fade. Regardless, I think he could obviously play well enough to cash a top 20, cash a top 10. We've seen him do that plenty in major championships. But for him to get a win, I think, is quite unlikely. And then Hideki, kind of getting off that narrative of him being injured, I think he looked really good last week. So he also shoots 10 under on Sunday last week. Seems to be in pretty good form. We know he can win major championships. I think he'll be relatively popular this week, but not going to get there on him either. Shane Lowry's looked good. Not a Shane Lowry guy, especially at 30-1. And then Victor Hovland, I think, similar to some of the other young guys, and we've talked about this every time, and it's the narrative with Victor. Is he going to be good enough around the greens to get it done? I don't know. It's too big of a question mark for me to take him, Matt. Did you consider it?
I considered it. I was planning on taking him this week, and then just the more I looked at it, the more I looked into it. The around the green scares me a lot. And it's not just the around the green; it's the around the green and the fact that, as I think he's like very, very good, but he just doesn't have a big win yet either. So it's like there's kind of a lot to overcome. Like he has to close out his first like really big win in a tough field at a major and like he's already not good around the green. Like imagine him with a 1-shot lead having to go like up and down on one of the final holes, or like tied and having to save par. Like that's terrifying.
No, yeah. And we didn't get into the course specifics like too granularly, but 18th is a beast. So yeah, him with a 1-shot lead on 18, having to make 2 great shots, and if he does somehow miss the green, having to go up and down for par, like that's gonna be tough. So
yeah, it's just not. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable, and I can't put myself through that this week.
Yeah. That being said, Victor's ceiling is winning this golf tournament for sure.
Yeah, I mean he's a ball striking king. It's
right.
Yeah. I mean if he hits it as well as he can, I still think to a degree he's going to have to be better than normal around the green. But yeah, but if he's hitting it that well, he's certainly going to compete.
All right, so let's see. Anyone else in this middle tier before we get into the long shots, Matt?
I like a few other guys. I like Joaquin Niemann.
All right.
I know a lot of people are a little sour on him after the way he closed last week, but I don't know. I'm not going to put too much stock into Sunday at the Byron Nelson. I saw some good things out of him for 3 rounds, which is, encouraging. And I mean, I think the knock on him is just kind of a little bit like lazy and outdated. Like he's not good enough around the green, which I just don't understand why that's still the narrative. Like what he has to do to disprove that. He's 5th around the green in his last 24 rounds. And he's gained now around the green in 9 straight events, 9 straight measured events. So the last one he lost in was in October of 2021. Like I just don't really know what else he has to do for us to like kind of stop talking about that. So he's obviously great ball striking. He's got the length here. He's traditionally pretty good in the wind. I think I'm hoping to have him drift a little bit more and get like a 50 on him. I haven't put it in yet, but I feel pretty comfortable saying that he's going to play well this week.
Yeah.
He kind of fell apart a little bit at the Masters, but he was paired with Tiger the first 2 rounds, and that was like really impressive to play that well with that whole like circus going on around you.
Yeah, I'm a little scarred from last week, considering I had him 1 and done, and obviously he was my 1 outright with a shot on Sunday, and he played horribly. But yeah, I mean the whole around the green thing, like you're saying, I mean it's completely outdated. I mean in his 32 rounds that are measured on a PGA Tour site right now, he's 11th in strokes gained around the green this year.
Yeah, I mean he's top 15 on tour, and people are saying it's his weakness.
Yeah, so as of right, I mean you could say that what potentially could be his biggest strength, which is his ball striking and approach play with his longer irons, has been something that's kind of slipped a little bit this year. But I mean, he's top 25 in strokes gained off the tee, top 15 in strokes gained around the green, top 100 in strokes gained putting. I mean, he's 10th in tee to green, 18th in strokes gained total, and his approach is inside the top 50. So, and if you look, more recently, obviously, we just saw him win at a tough track at Riviera where he completely shut down the field and won by multiple strokes. Played okay at the Masters, played good at RBC Heritage, and obviously played good last week until Sunday. So I think this course could set up really nicely for Joaquin, and it is tough to see. It's similar to Hovland. I think it's like him winning one of these big ones will be tough, but I think maybe the Genesis will give him the confidence to do so if he is in contention on Sunday that, he can kind of compete with the best of them. But I'm on board. I think I may be joining you on Niemann here. I would like to say a little bit better number 2, but I mean, I'll be crazy to kind of jump off him just for one bad round last week where he's as well-rounded as it gets. And I think he's going to be bombing the ball off the tee this week with the wide fairways. And I mean, yeah, it's hard to be as worried as you would have been with his around the green games. And his putting has been great too. So I like it.
Yeah. And if it helps ease, your concern a little bit, like we just talked about in the opening, this has been kind of a breakthrough spot for a lot of these young guys, dating back to Keegan. I mean, JT's only major was the PGA. He probably had some bigger wins than Niemann going into that, but we have seen this kind of be a spot. Morikawa, we had the same concerns about him going into the PGA back in 2020 or 2021, whenever that was, when he won at Harding Park. Can he break through at this spot? So I think it's time to just kind of stop doubting some of these young guys and let it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nice number too, so I like it. I'm just going to get my obligatory Sam Burns piece out of the way here. He's at 48-1 currently on FanDuel. I bet him after the Sanderson back in October. He was at 90-1. Put in a large wager for him to be the PGA champion this year, the year of Sam Burns. I mean, it's a little concerning, obviously, that he missed the cut last week. And the only really concerning part is that he didn't hit the ball well on approach, which is going to be obviously very important for him this week. But other than that, and his miscut at the Masters, I mean, he did play well in a team event at the Zurich with Horschel. I think Horschel obviously played well too. But Burns, I'm not trying to talk anyone into him necessarily at 50-1, but I still don't necessarily think it's a bad bet. I mean, he won the Valspar back in March. He's not that far removed from having good form. He played well at Arnold Palmer, played pretty well at the Players. Then obviously finished 2021 playing extremely well. And when he's one of those young guys too that has a complete game when he's on, and a little recent form would have been nice. But like I said, he did win the Valspar less than 2 months ago. So that's my Sam Burns take. I think the course shapes up well for him too. He can kind of rip it off the tee. If his approach game's looking good, I think he'll be in fine come Sunday. But I was feeling a lot more confident about it 2 months ago. Let's say that. So.
Well, I mean, at the number you got it at, it's
it feels great.
Yeah, so.
Get him at double the number that what he ended up at. So that's all you can really ask for when you put in a future. And like I said, I wish I'd put in more potentially at this point, but that's what I got. So.
Well, yeah, one more than me, so that's probably good.
All right, so who else do you like in this mid-tier before we get to, I guess, potential long shots?
Got one more guy in here. I will say real quickly, I did consider Max Homa, especially after our win on him 2 weeks ago. And it's the fact that he plays a difficult course as well. But looking more into it, I mean, he's really kind of a disaster around the green, and he is striking it well. We kind of talked about that with Hovland, but even his win at the Wells Fargo, I mean, it just kind of seemed like to duplicate that, it's very unlikely. He gained 7.9 strokes putting. I mean, I just don't see that happening again this week. So I think the around the green is going to be even more difficult this week. I just don't see him getting there. So I'm going to not take him, but I'm going to take Daniel Berger. Berger. Yeah, I mean, he's 15th around the green last 24 rounds, 13th in approach. He's one of those guys. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about this kind of around the Players and time when he switched his – they brought it up. It was happening over time, but how he kind of switched his ball flight to become a shorter hitter but more accurate and kind of had that lower ball flight. And he kind of was going the opposite direction of some of those guys who were just trying to bomb it out there. But it's really been working for him. I think that could help this week, especially if there's wind. I like kind of his game a lot for this course with the iron play, the around the green, and just how he plays in these tough events. He was 4th at the Honda in those tough conditions, 13th at the Players, and he was on the wrong side of the draw in that one. He's 7th at the U.S. Open back in 2021, so I kind of like him in these grinded out type events. I think that's a pretty good number, 55.
But we got a 70.
Yeah, you're right. I did get 70.
We got 70s, so I'm in on Berger too.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think this could shape up really nicely for him. If it is going to be windy, I think the lower ball flight you just talked about should help him a ton, and he does everything that you would need to do to compete at this event. I mean, he's 13th in strokes gained total of the last 36 rounds on tough courses. He's great at avoiding bogeys, great at scrambling, top 5 in both of those over his last 50 rounds. And we know his approach game can be elite. I mean, I think if he's not still first in strokes gained on approach this year, he's definitely top 5. So I love Daniel Berger this week, especially at the number we got him at. But I mean, even at 55-1, I think there's plenty to be said about Berger. I guess, not seeing him since RBC is a little concerning. I mean, it's been a month, but like you said, I mean, played well at the Honda, played well at the Players. Similar to JT, was on the wrong side of the draw and battled it out in the wind and the rain on that Saturday to get himself into a top 15 finish. Didn't play well at the Masters, but I think his game kind of sets up maybe better for these PGA U.S. Open type setups on these difficult tracks. So I love it.
I'm glad we're on the same page here. It looks like we got quite a few great group plays. Actually, if we got absolutely crazy, you could talk me into JT, and I could talk you into Rory, and we have like an identical card going.
Holy shit, you're right.
And we can have a real big celebration when we have the group hit on Sunday.
We're actually really close to having it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you might not be on board with some of my 2 long shots down here, but
yeah, well, I probably won't be, to be honest, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, I think we kind of talked about everyone. I think Corey Connors, Tony Finau numbers aren't great, and yeah, I'm not betting Tony Finau or Corey Connors to win a major. And then we're above 65-1. Jason Day, Adam Scott, Louis Oosthuizen, Keegan Bradley, Tiger Woods, Cam Young, Tyrrell Hatton, Billy Horschel, Jason Kokrak, Abe Answer, and Tommy Fleetwood. And then the guy who's been on an injury hiatus, Bryson DeChambeau, is supposedly playing this week. He's at 100-1. So those are guys all from 65 to 100, Matt. Is there anyone out there that you were looking to take for in the outright market?
I have one of these guys. He's been on your card recently. I can't believe I'm going to do it, but down here, it's fair to take a shot. I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
So
yeah, I mean, I had him last week, and he played like shit. So.
Yeah. Well, I told you last week when you took him that I liked him more on difficult courses.
True.
And last week wasn't great, but before last week, he was 10th at RBC, 14th at the Masters, 16th at the Valspar, 22nd at the Players, and 20th at the Arnold Palmer. So a pretty good stretch of golf there. He is 16th around the green and 8th in short gain in his last 24 rounds, and he's gained now on approach in 4 straight events. So I like those going in. I mean, I think obviously it's difficult to really be super confident in a guy who's never won in the U.S. But, think about the events that he's competed at. It's some of these tougher tracks like the Honda where he choked to Sanjay Im. He came second when Bryson won the U.S. Open, and he had another good finish at the U.S. Open as well. So I'm going to take a shot at Tommy down here. I think he's kind of been playing well under the radar. But I guess everyone is just kind of over the fact that he's a loser over here. But I'm going to take a chance. Down this deep of a number, why not?
Yeah, I mean, by the definition, he is certainly a loser because he's never won. So,
Yeah.
But all right, I don't hate. Was not expecting that at all. Do not hate that. The only thing I would consider down here, well, not even consider, I'm just an obligatory sprinkle on Tiger Woods' miracle. Because if he wins, I need to be a part of it. So Tiger Woods will be on the card as well, and I think he's got to be stronger than he was at the Masters. Like he's got to be.
I will say, I think he's got a better chance to win this than he does the Masters.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think every time he plays, he should have a better chance than the time before until, we're 5 or 6 years from now. But, I think Tiger hopefully is in a little better condition than he was at the Masters. I think getting that under his belt certainly probably felt good to make the cut. And if there's a make the cut prop, I'm definitely will be taking that as well this week. But
I will say he was a lot better at the Masters than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd be worried about, I mean, he wasn't super sharp with the short game. Which I think
makes sense, but
yeah, it does make sense, but that's going to be key for him this week, obviously.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's fair.
But yeah, it's more of an obligatory play just to have a piece of Tiger Woods when he does win his next major. And yeah, I got him 85-1, so we'll take it. And honestly, like there's a few guys down here that I'm considering for maybe top 20 plays, but I'm pretty locked in on my outright card for the most part, being someone's winning at under 50-1. We have seen some crazier things happen, but I think it's going to be pretty tough for any of these names to win. That being said, I don't mind. I mean, I'm over 100-1 now, but I don't mind Alex Noren for a top 20 look. He's at 75-1, but I don't mind Louis Oosthuizen for a top 20 look as well. I mean, he's kind of now that shine from last year is kind of worn off.
It is kind of funny because you talk about futures and like how you wish you took the futures. I'm kind of chuckling because there's quite a few people on Twitter I saw posting their, like not that long ago before the season, their Louis Oosthuizen to finish top 10 in every major bets.
Ooh, yeah.
And it's like now he's just yesterday's news.
Yeah. And obviously whatever odds they got it at would be much better today than they were whenever they took them, I'm assuming. So I don't hate Louis at a tough track like this. And I think he's proven similar to Xander, obviously, that he can compete at the major championships. Just don't trust him to win at all. But I think it kind of shapes up well for him. His around the green game has been probably the best part of his game of late. And he definitely plays the tough tracks well. I mean, current form, not really spectacular by any means. He's really not played well since 2021. I mean, he did finish top 15 at the Phoenix Open, and he hasn't missed a cut in a while. I'll give him that much. But, 42nd at the Players, really not a ton to be super hopeful about. But those are two guys I'm looking at top 20 down here. Matt, what else is on your radar down here?
I got one more long shot to win. Kind of obligatory here. 120. Sergio, got to do it. Too big of a number not to do it. He's actually playing kind of well lately. I mean, he hasn't really sniffed a win, but 21st Wells Fargo, 23rd Masters, 26th Players, 38th API, 39th Genesis. His last 5.
No, it's kind of funny. Your two guys down here have been kind of floating down the board together, Patrick Reed and Sergio.
Yeah, I considered Reed just because of the emphasis on around the green, but I mean he's been really bad with his irons, and off the tee is kind of always a struggle with him. But I'm hoping he's kind of gets his form back by the U.S. Open.
Yeah, I mean now that I'm saying it, I actually will probably consider taking him for a top 20 as well.
It's kind of like when I first was like, oh wow, it could be like all about around the green. I'm like, this is kind of where Reed like gets those wins where he goes up and down and everything. But he's obviously been he's never been a great ball striker, but he's been a lot worse in the past like 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, his form really has not been great. But even his finish last year was 17th at the PGA, and he did finish top 20 at the U.S. Open last year as well. So.
And he actually in the big events this year, he's played all right.
Yeah, I'm probably going to take it for top 20 now that I mentioned it. So,
I mean, like you talked me into that.
Yeah,
you gonna take Sergio in the top 20?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I think there's a couple other guys that are real far down the board. I think you can look at those types of markets. Mark Leishman is at 160 to 1 currently. I mean. The form of him has not been spectacular either, but just another guy that I think will compete well in these conditions, and I think could find himself creeping into a top 20 conversation. We're not too far removed from playing well at the beginning of 2022 at the Farmers, the Genesis, even at the Century Tournament of Champions. But Leishman is also on my radar for a top 20, and his PGA resume is not great. I mean, he's missed his last 3 cuts, but. Just number-wise, kind of seems like something that might be worthwhile. Anything else down here on your radar?
No, I mean, there's some guys over 200 that I wanted to do, but I just don't think I can get there. Thomas Peters, Keith Mitchell, shout out you guys. It's not this week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just throw out some names that are down here that are some pretty wild odds. I mean, Bubba Watson's at 280 to 1.
With an Augusta comp, like.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Bubba's not really competed at Augusta recently anyway, but it is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and he's obviously been just playing really poorly, and he's never really not never. I mean, he has a runner-up at the PGA back in 2010, but other than that, his PGA performances have not been great. Kevin Kisner is also at 280 to 1. Ryan Palmer coming off a good performance last week. That kind of interests me a little bit. Not in the outright market, but in a potential top finishing market. I like the course form coming in. I think that, I mean, he obviously gained strokes in all metrics last week, and he's kind of really put together 4 pretty good rounds for the first time in a while. But being a veteran, I think he'll be ready to play this week too. But they're going to be juicy odds. I'll just say that.
Speaking of some veterans, Ian Poulter is 420 to 1.
Yeah, that's
crazy.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't that long ago. I was talking about like 80 to 1. Guess that was pretty bad. Pretty bad bet.
Yeah, Martin Keimer, former major champion, 430 to 1. Our guy Harry Higgs is in the field, 650 to 1. Jason Duffner, former PGA champion, 650 to 1 as well. These are some insane odds, and it's not the week to be taking long shots.
Yeah.
You can sprinkle some, and I don't hate the top 20, top 30 plays on some of these guys down here if you see some good value, but it's really tough
Higgs play well last year at Kiowa?
I'm not positive on that. I mean, he's played well in some
I thought he did.
unexpected circumstances, but yeah. I mean, he's missed his last 3 cuts. That's all I know. Yeah, he finished 4th last year at Kiowa.
Yeah, so I mean,
so we've done crazy.
Top 5.
Yeah. All right. I guess before we wrap up, boss, what are your thoughts on the cards and what are you working with this week?
I mean, overall, I was just there entertained by that stroll down the card by you gentlemen. Fantastic insight per usual. Great restraint too in the long shot section. Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you start scrolling down FanDuel or DraftKings on a major week, you can get yourself caught on some names. And I mean, I didn't even mention Ricky Fowler is playing this week. Credit to me. He's 160 to 1. Not doing it. I also didn't even mention Russell Henley, also 120 to 1. So we're making progress. Yeah. So I know you're not taking any long shots. So what are you working with at the top of the board?
No. I'm not a long shot guy, especially not on a major week. Anchoring at the top of the board, I already have Spieth locked in, and JT is likely going to join him there. So it looks like we are at least half in step there, potentially full lockstep with your decision pending. Gonna be in on Hideki. I'm looking for a better number, hoping I will get it based on what is available to me at this current time. But I think he's played really well now that he's kind of past the injury. Especially comps to Augusta gives me some high hopes for Hideki this week. And then jumping down a bit, I have that Berger number with you guys. They're excited for Berger. And then I did go to Max Homa. I know, Matt, you said the around the green worries you this week, but I feel like his form on difficult golf courses and ability to get up and down and grind out those pars, whether it's more the putting than the wedges and chipping and whatnot, just the ability to get it done gives me some confidence, and it is a bit of a payback since he's won twice for us already this year. So
yeah,
I can allocate a few shekels from those winnings to back our boy Max and hopefully get some good major form going there.
Okay. All right. I love it.
I also will say I'm probably not going to fall into the Cam Young. I don't want to call it a trap this week because he's been fantastic, but I feel like he's going to be super popular on like DFS and the pool pick golfers from each tier kind of thing.
Yep.
Because he's been so good, but I mean maybe he'll be fantastic, but I feel like it could be he's a darling on the tour, and then up first major, this is a different ballgame kind of deal. I like to be wrong because I really do like him, like his game, and he's been fantastic. But I feel like that he could be that guy this week because there's usually a couple of them out there where everyone's, this guy's the best guy in this, 4th tier range or whatever, X dollars, yada yada, and then it's just like, oh, how did it all go so wrong for everyone who all had the same guy?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
That's very fair. All right. Well, one and done. Thoughts for me quickly. I mean, still inside the top 100 after Joaquin Niemann somehow didn't finish inside the top 10 last week. I mean, I get it. It was a birdie fest, but whatever. So I'm between Scheffler and Spieth. I've already used Rory, JT, Rahm, so I'm sticking towards the top of the board. If I were to get really bold, it would be Sam Burns, but I don't think I'm going to do it. So I think I'm going to stick with Scheffler or Spieth to get me through one and done. Matt?
Yeah, Burns burned me last week. I was on a good stretch, and then he missed a cut for me. I similarly used a lot of guys up top. I'm considering Scheffler. I still have Spieth. I think they're both safe plays. If I want to get a little bold, it could really be a big Joaquin Niemann week, but we'll see. We'll see where it ends up there.
Wow. All right, boss. I know you're creeping up into respectable territory.
I made a few strides. I was excited about. I didn't even have Neiman last week, but I took Burns, so that set me back a little bit. But I had Neiman outright.
JT, you didn't?
I should have. This is why it's a problem. I pivoted. I pivoted, and as you can tell, I just right back into the mousetrap for Boss and one and done. Got to just go with the gut. So I guess following that up, I should go with Spieth because that's who my initial pick was. I will say my pivot was going to be Scheffler, which I feel like would be a safe pivot, but with how things are going for me this year, we're going to stick.
I would suggest not pivoting. Yeah, just stick with your gut.
I'm going to stick with my gut. We're going with Spieth. I'm going to lock it in the second we hit and record on this.
Okay, beautiful. All right, the brief recap. I mean, it looks like me and Matt are going to be on very similar cards this week. I've got JT locked in, Brooks, Burns, Berger, and Tiger locked in as well. And then I'm probably jumping on board with Neiman. And I got to make a decision up top, definitely between Spieth and Rory after kind of going through the board with you guys. But that's what I'm working with this week. I'm going to have a slew of those top 20s in the range that I kind of talked about, Oosthuizen, Noren. I probably consider some other guys that I do like Henley, but I have some decisions to make down there. Patrick
went from not mentioning him to he's on the card. Look at that.
Yeah, and Patrick Reed as well. So that's where I'm at.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll have to take Patrick Reed if you're on board, but I'll go. I'm gonna do Rory. Debating JT, we might have a work out an agreement there. And then Brooks, Neiman, Berger, and then Fleetwood and Sergio as the bombs down there.
All right.
And yeah, that's what we're looking at this week. I feel like we're gonna have a victory Monday on this day.
I would love it. I mean, this is a great week. It's gonna be awesome at Southern Hills.
We've been on a little bit of a major drought, and I think we're gonna snap it this week.
Yeah, we are in a major drought. Not major drought like we're in a drought. We just hit Max Homa. We're in a major drought. Like we haven't hit a major recently. And I mean, that probably has a lot to do with Brooks Koepka not winning in the past couple of years. So
I won last year.
I mean, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
And I'm ready to be burned if Colin Morikawa wins this week. So.
Oh, geez.
All right, so we'll catch you guys next week. Hopefully it's a victory Monday.